Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. The reason I've got my arm just off to the side is because I'm on my own today with Indy, my dog. He is here today, and just to actually prove he really is, there he is. That's Indy. Everyone else believed, or lots of people believed, that he didn't actually exist. He does. I'm going to let him lie down. But yeah, the reason I actually showed him as well is because we haven't had our post delivered yet. So at any point as this goes on, he could go absolutely mad. So just want to set the scene there. So the transfer window, we got there. We got to the end of it. Just about 10 minutes before 11 o'clock, Pedro Porro was finally announced. I know, obviously, I did the last video, and very much, I'd hope you took my tone from it, that I was very much saying Sporting had been quite awkward in negotiations, so, you know, anything could happen. Anything did. But we got there. We got there. And it was such a weird transfer window because it was pretty much everyone's eyes were on Daniel Levy, really, about whether he could improve, you know, I guess Spurs and Conte's prospects for the second half of the season. The answer was just about. I do think Spurs have improved their squad. I do think they have, and I'd say they've improved their team because of Porro. Was it enough? We'll see. Because I think this is the issue. You know, I've spoken about it before, said in December, Spurs' priorities for this window were a new right wing back and attacking player. They delivered both of those in Arnaut Danjuma and Pedro Porro. However, the issue lies with the interpretation, I guess, of what those priorities should have been. The club's priorities were those two positions. I think most people outside, probably including myself, you know, had seen a team that shipped 21 goals in 10 games, yet with a third highest scorer in the Premier League. So, to me, that screams defenders. I don't know. It might just be me, but that's kind of, well, I don't think it is, judging by social media. But that's, you know, it seems that should have really been the thing. I mean, and you could argue, even going further the other way, that maybe when you already had 3 attacking wing-backs, including one who signed in the summer, hadn't even really been used yet. And obviously with those goals that have been scored, maybe a new forward and attacking wing-back were probably less of a priority than maybe an upgrade in central defence. But I am not the club. I wish I could make decisions for the club because they make some rotten ones. As we'll come to find out, or we'll talk about as this video goes on. But Porro, yeah, I don't know how great his English is, and he did the interview in Spanish, but certainly looks to be that he's going to be able to hold conversations, and certainly seems to be understanding what people are asking him to do as well. But yeah, honestly, he's got everything about him to potentially become world class. He's a very, very, very good player now, Champions League player. So that is, I do feel he's an upgrade in that role, with no disrespect to anyone previously there, but more in terms of being a ready-made player than Jed Spence. Yes, of course. Despite only being, a year older. But he just has that top-flight experience behind him. So, yeah, I do think it's a terrific signing. But I think we need to talk about the way it happened. So, he was their top target for months. As I said before, Spurs have looked at him a long, long time. There were only some question marks over whether for Conte he was the right man in terms of physicality. Was he, you know, the big strapping 6-foot kind of beast that Conte often likes to have across the pitch in every role? No, but certainly a very, very talented player in that position as well. Yet their top target for months, he was signed 10 minutes, well, he was announced 10 minutes before the 11 p.m. deadline on transfer deadline day. Only Tottenham Hotspur. It really is. What I would say, and I'm going to be quite critical of them in this video and various other aspects, what I would say of Porro, there's different sides to this. There's, I think, the sporting side to this. And yeah, the release clause, which there's very differing versions of what exactly that entailed. So I think there's a certain irony that dealing or trying to get a deal across the line of that nature, Daniel Levy would come up against essentially his Portuguese equivalent. With Sporting doing a lot of things that some I can go into, some I can't, because I wasn't able to get some of them double, sourced, which is always my way. I always want to get everything at least double sourced. But certainly coming up against a lot of instances and negotiating tactics that I'm fully aware, having spoken to many people, many agents, many people at other clubs, that Daniel Levy has done himself to other clubs over the years. So, yeah, there is a huge dollop of irony that's the deal that really relied on him working with such people as well. Because, look, we have to make this very, very clear. Sporting had no real desire to sell Pedro Porro, and that was the biggest obstacle from the start in all of this. They made this clear for weeks. And then there's this release clause, which I've heard so many different versions of this, and from people involved around the deal as well. Actually getting this pinpointed what it means. I've heard that the deal itself was only active for the first almost 2 weeks of the window, slightly more. I've heard that it had a notice period on it that had to be triggered, which kind of is the same thing. Because if the notice period, let's say, was 2 weeks, it would mean you'd only have the first 2 weeks. I think if that were to be true, it's to protect the selling club from losing their player right at the last second and having no way to replace him. But then there's also a third version, which I saw in the Portuguese media, that the clause actually was only ever active in the summer transfer window. There seems to be no kind of, what's the best way, corroboration of exactly what this clause was. So this is why, if it's any of the former, then yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% in the camp of, oh my goodness, why didn't you just go early? Because they were prepared to, sounds like in the end, just to get it done, they were prepared to meet the clause. But if that is the case, why wasn't that done early? So, but I'm not fully stepping into that camp because I can't get a definitive pin down on exactly what this release clause details were. Because even in the Portuguese media, I've seen different versions. In the English media, I've seen different. I've noticed a lot of the English media ones have kind of stepped away from reporting on the release clause because I think it's because of these discrepancies in the versions of it. So yeah, I can't really go too far down that side. But Spurs were getting somewhere. You could tell that in my last video. They were gradually getting somewhere, and then it may well be because I recorded a video and the imbalance in the earth suddenly decided to shift in another direction. There was definitely this feeling that Sporting were dragging out negotiations. I think I said that before. And then suddenly on Sunday, big problems started to happen. And then that saw like real kind of late night issues. The scheduled medical for Monday was suddenly yanked off of the timetable. Pedro Porro himself was very, very unhappy apparently about it all, and the whole deal was hanging in the balance. So yes, lots of posturing, lots of brinkmanship. You had kind of both sides kind of trying to clearly get their side of the story. You could see the English reports, you could see the Portuguese reports. There's Portuguese reports stating that I think it was falling down over, was an admin fees over like 2.6 million or something. And Spurs obviously just putting out there was a lot of talk about frustrations, and it's just quite funny how the whole brinkmanship stuff goes. But they returned to the table on Monday, and whatever the differences ended up being, they were overcome. And there was also another interesting element to the deal, and I think this was maybe why Sporting was so reluctant to initially sell in this window. Was that they, from what I understand, have various financial commitments that they really required this deal to go through in the next financial year. My theory, and again, this isn't 100% confirmed in any way, but I have had heard that Sporting if it went through within a certain quicker time frame, would have to pay Man City a bigger sum of money for the deal, as they brought him from Manchester City. So I wonder, this is purely speculation, because honestly I haven't been able to kind of pin down exactly on this whether this is true or not, this extra bit of money, but it's just what I'm told. And if that's the case, then by doing a loan and then a sale in the summer, perhaps that lessens that fee. And maybe that was part of the kind of machine that ended up getting this done. So what it is, it's a loan with an obligation to buy. And I think in total it's around 45 million euros, which is 39.5 million pounds. And the player's registration will be fully transferred on July the 1st. So obviously, it's really difficult, this, because I understand, and I completely understand the frustrations of a lot of people suddenly when, oh, it's another loan, rubbish. What I would say is this, more than any other one, is very much loan in all, permanent deal in all but name, because it's a loan for the financial aspect for Sporting. However, the way to maybe look at it is this deal, the way Spurs were trying to get it done, was always going to be paid in instalments anyway. So with this loan element of it, simply the loan fee ends up just really becoming the first instalment, because it is only a loan for, what are we talking, 5 months? We're not talking about a loan that, let's say Kulusevski, that you could argue, yes, that's a loan that is over 2 seasons. That is definitely a longer term loan thing. Whereas with this being 5, 6 months, I think it's 5 months, isn't it? My maths is absolutely gone. When's July 1st? Yeah, 6 months. Yeah, so no, it's 5 months, isn't it? Sorry about that. Yeah, so essentially, really does that loan fee works as the first instalment, and then obviously the next ones will come in kind of. And I'd imagine the way Sporting were holding out, I'd imagine there's going to be less instalments as well. I'd certainly heard at one point about it maybe being in 2 big instalments. So I kind of this narrative that I certainly would have gone down had it been a longer loan of, oh my goodness, they've spent nothing. I think you just have to look at it as a whole package. So yeah, the other thing as well, there were also reports in Portugal that claim that Spurs have scaled down their sell-on clause for Marcus Edwards as part of the deal, down to about 30%, which was around 45%. Before that, it was originally 50%, but I'm pretty sure I remember that when Vitória sold Marcus Edwards to Sporting, as a condition of Spurs taking across a sell-on clause, I think they lost about 5% of it. I think, if I remember reading the statement that went up on one of the websites, I think it was Vitória's website that spoke about that. So I think it's gone down from around 45 roughly to 30. So yeah, so Sporting, they're getting their money's worth here for the player. They're getting around £40 million. They're getting whatever that 15% or so of Marcus Edwards' clause ends up being. I feel like he does have an actual release clause as well. So I think there's only a certain amount they can get right now.